Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Visualizing Innovation. Be inspired and learn more with your research brain. Looks like we're getting started right on time today, and we've got a lot of really great information to share with you throughout today's webinar. We're going to have 3 different sample brains, and I just want to let everyone know right up front, these sample brains that are all about research and innovation under a variety of different topics will all be available for you to download at the end of today's webinar. So if one of them piques your interest, it's of a particular topic that you're interested in, or you just want to have a look and dive further into these brain databases that we've created, we're only going to scratch the surface in all of these brains. There's a lot of feature-rich information in these brains. So you can download copies of them or even browse through them online, and those links will be made available to you at the end of today's webinar. So my name is Matt Caton, and I am joined today by Jay Ofemi.
Hey, how's it going? Pretty excited to be joining you today, Matt, and we got some pretty exciting stuff to talk about.
Great.
So can't wait to get started.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining us, and let's just jump into it right away. Once again, Visualizing Innovation. The purpose of today's webinar is to give you an idea of how you can use the Brain software to visualize your research and actually help your research give you further insight into the data that you're collecting and easier access, of course, along the way. So we're really going to do our best to highlight specific features of the brain that you may not have been familiar with that will be beneficial to you as your brain continues to grow and evolve. And with that, Jay, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay, great. All right, yeah, so some of you who joined us in last year's webinar might be familiar with this brain. It's a brain that we started building, and I had mentioned last year that we will try to keep it in development and kind of include new missions as we go along. And you know, a few things has happened since then, so we thought it might be kind of fun to touch back on this brain. And another thing I mentioned last time in the last webinar was that this brain could essentially be explored without the content section. And I think that's what I'm going to try to do today. Just try to explore this brain with you. You know, go over some of the new things that we've added, but trying to use the content section as minimally as possible, simply because we built this brain to just have a lot of details on the Plex. So that's something I wanted to highlight for today's presentation. So right now it's in Wonder mode. It's just kind of showing you different topics here, but I'm going to go ahead and stop it and go to the home thought here. Actually, let's make sure we uncheck that and just go to the home thought. So you know, when we were putting together this brain, we were kind of thinking in what direction should we take, you know, presenting this brain, especially because we kind of knew it was going to be it was a brain we were putting together to present. And I thought it would be great to just start on Earth, because that's where, you know, we all are right now, and then kind of expand out from there. So that's why Earth is kind of the home thought here. And you can see every other thing that's connected to it is our objects in the solar system, and our topmost level thought here is the sun, just mainly because this is a brain talking about human exploration in space. And one thing that we will touch on, which is the interstellar thought or tag that you can see here. So this is a tag, but it can be linked like any other thought. But this interstellar topic is just really cool because it talks about some of like the farthest reaching spacecrafts that we have, like the Voyager 1. And even in comparison to that, you know, it hasn't gone very far from our solar system. So I thought having the sun be the topmost level of this brain would be appropriate, because that's essentially the most we've explored so far. And then, as you can see here, the links to the other objects, these are objects orbiting the sun. And you can see the links to them. We actually use the link labels to identify how far they are from the sun in astronomical units. So one thing that's actually really useful that you can use the links for, that not a lot of people know about, is that the links can be, you can add notes to the links like you can thoughts as well. So for example, if you're looking at this context here and you're thinking, well, I'm not really sure what these labels are, you can click on the 1AU here and open up the note, and it actually says, hang on, let me make sure I have that, and it actually tells you what 1 astronomical unit is. So you can kind of have like that little reference there to then go through the rest of these to know essentially how far they are to the sun in reference to the Earth. So that's what all these labels are here, and we thought that was just like a cool feature to highlight. That also is kind of like a feature that I don't see a lot of people using, but it really does help bring out the detail in the Plex without having to necessarily look into the content section, into the notes to see, why is this thing connected to its parent thought. You kind of just can see it here. So with that said, with every single one of these thoughts that we enter, every single one of these contexts that we enter, everything that's linked to this thought, it makes sense why it's there, or it actually helps you enable. Whenever you're exploring this brain, it enables like deeper exploration of this brain, where it's like everything is so interconnected that you might start to kind of go into this rabbit hole of exploring more and more topics. So if we just kind of click through the planets here, another feature we really try to highlight here are the thought icons. So for each one of these thought icons, usually when you create a thought, there will be a default icon on the thought. But for each one of these these are custom icons that we assign to each one of these thoughts, just to kind of also visually represent why these are connected here. You don't have to click on each thought to go there or to see what it is. You can just hover over the icon here to expand, and you can kind of get a visual representation of what it is. And something like arrows, you're like, what is that? It's an asteroid. You can quickly tell it's an asteroid by just looking at the picture, but also the classification we have here for using thought labels, can help you come to that conclusion as well. So using thought labels, using link labels, using thought icons, we've really tried to make this Plex view as detailed as possible in this brain. So another feature that we try to use in this brain are the thought pins up here. These are essentially like bookmarks for your web browser. It's a website that you like to go to often, you bookmark it. So here, if you have a brain like this one that has quite a lot of topics, quite a lot of thoughts, you want to sort of bookmark a few things that you want to touch on, especially if you're presenting this brain. So in here we have, I wouldn't say it's every single mission that we've been on. We've tried to include as many as we can, but I'm sure we're missing out on some. But it is quite populated with quite a lot of missions that we've been on. In fact, we also created this thought here called the timeline, which is another thought that I wanted to highlight real quick, where normally when you build out, or most brains that I've seen built out, we kind of build them sort of, you build a topic and then you build subtopics below it. If you think of like a thought as a single topic, and then you build, subcategories below it. But for this timeline thought here, it's sort of just like a linear context where you can click through these thoughts to kind of follow it all the way down, and the details of each thought is actually linked as a jump. So that's not something that typically you'll see brains that are, even in this brain, most of the other sections are linked in such a way where the details of the thought you're looking at are linked as children, and then maybe a related thought is linked as a jump, and then maybe a higher, so you would have like a topic up here, a subtopic here, and then maybe even further subtopics down here. But in this example here, we have sort of just like a linear view where it's this is just timeline describing what we're about to enter, but from here on it's just different years, and then on the side is where we talk about in those years what missions do we go on. And I think this is actually a pretty cool way to also progress through this brain, because essentially, other than organizations and also certain people that have now toured space, you can essentially cover most of this brain by just going through these years, because it talks about the missions, and then when you click on a single mission, it'll kind of expand out to talk about what rocket the mission, or what rocket was sent up in that mission, who were the operators of that mission, and then even from here you can already see other things that are interconnected to those thoughts that are showing up, and then also something like so for this mission, where did that mission go? These are all things that we thought was appropriate to connect as parent thoughts up here. And then below, so for crewed missions like these here, below we just connected the crew there. So we have thought icons as well for these guys to kind of, without having to click here to get a look at, oh, who is this person? That is an option as well, but we thought keeping you on the Plex view here while still giving you as much detail as possible was really a really cool idea to sort of bring out of this brain. So yeah, as you can see here, we have thought icons for all of these guys, and it's really cool to just kind of go through, especially the crewed missions, where we also created a crew mission tag here to tag every mission that was that had a crew in it, and it's really cool to just kind of go through all of these and just kind of see which missions have gone up and who's been to space pretty much, right? And actually in this tourism thought, which is a new thought that we've added this year, it was actually funny because last year during the presentation we were talking about tour in space, and Matt had created, I believe it was I don't even know if I can find it now, but Matt had created a thought that was about want to go to space, here's how you can do it, all that, and I guess it probably was this thought, right? So it covered pretty much the options that you had to go to space at the time, and there weren't a lot. And we kind of joked about it that that's the promising future, right? But at this point, actually, I went back and did the research to see how many tourist missions we've sent up, and at this point, it's looking like quite a few, with companies like Blue Origin, I think, leading that at this point. They've sent up quite a few tourist missions and things like that. And for all these tourist missions as well, we've added a thought for some of the people who were sent up. I believe most of these are so these crewed missions tag does still also have astronauts being sent to the space station and things like that, but the tourist is sort of like a difference between these two contexts, like these two thoughts. The tourism topic has more of like civilians being sent up to space. So these NS missions, for example, I believe most of the people on here were civilians, and it's actually really cool to see that we've like crossed that threshold now, where it's actually like something you could talk about, like tour in space, which I think is pretty cool. And from there we could just move on. So you can see that each one of these missions here, we kind of follow the same path of what rocket took them up, who the operators are, and in this case, since these aren't missions to explore like a specific object in space, they are the parent thought here is tourism, just to kind of say these are missions, tourist missions, essentially. So if we can move on to organizations at this point, and kind of another thing I wanted to bring out is how interconnected this brain is. I don't really have to necessarily use these pins that I have here, but I can use them if I want to sort of jump from one topic to another. But because this brain is so interconnected, it's actually easy to just kind of change contexts on the fly without having to use these pins. And so for all of the organizations we have here, so there might be some organizations again that we did not include here, mainly maybe because I just couldn't find enough information, or I try to focus on recent events, especially with updating this brain. So it's possible that we've missed some missions here or some organizations. But yeah, we do have, for these organizations, we do have just, if we can, a little bit of information about them, and then also some of the missions that we've noted in this brain here. And it's pretty cool to just kind of go through this brain. So like Matt said, this brain will be available for those who want to download it and update it however you want. You can download a copy of this brain onto your computer and just kind of go through these missions. If you also have things that you want to kind of if you want to tell us something that you want us to update in this brain, you can also let us know through support@thebrain.com, and we can update it as well. But you can also download a copy of this onto your computer and essentially, play around with this brain. But I think that's most of what I wanted to touch on here. Let me just go through. Oh, actually, so my pens come in handy here because the interstellar thought that I wanted to touch on, I thought this was just a really cool. So before you take over here, Matt, let me
Sure.
talk about this real quick because it's pretty cool, or at least I think it's cool. Um, so the interstellar thought here just kind of highlights our so far our trip out into space, and I think it's pretty cool that so on this link here on the NASA website, you can actually check out live how far Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are, and in light time currently, I mean, so Voyager 1 has been out. I believe Voyager 1 is the farthest reaching one. It's been out for 44 years, and in light time, that's about 21 minutes or 21 hours. Sorry. And the closest star to us, which is Proxima Centauri, if I'm not mistaken, is about 4.2 light years away. So, a 44-year trip, it's just kind of mind blowing to me that, a 44-year trip, and we're still nowhere near the closest star. So, yeah, exploring stuff like that about space, I think is really interesting. I really had fun, doing the research, putting this brain together, and I think it was really cool to highlight some of these brain features using this information because it is really cool to explore this brain, especially just using the Plex. So with that said, I think I will hand it over to Matt here, and I do recommend that if anyone is interested, go ahead and download this brain and play around with it, and we'll take any suggestions you might have. And yeah, I'll go ahead
Absolutely.
and hand that over to you, Matt.
Great, thank you. And yeah, like Jay said, we will have a link to this brain available so you can download your own copy. The question did come up, Jay. People wanted to know how many thoughts, how much content was in this brain. This brain currently, as of right now, has 547 thoughts in it. And that's what sort of harkens back to my comment earlier about this brain being so feature rich. Almost every
Right.
thought Jay clicked on had some type of web page, news story, content, images, notes, facts, information about that particular topic. And the true benefit is just seeing how it's related to other thoughts elsewhere in the brain. All the different human-made devices that have landed or are orbiting around Mars, we have marked out. What ship got it there? What was the date of that launch, and so forth. So it's just a lot of really, really fascinating information about space. And this brain, while Jay really took the reins on this particular brain and has added the vast majority of the content, it is a shared brain. So we all contribute from time to time, and that's through a feature we call Team Brain. You can send a note into support@thebrain.com if you want to learn more about Team Brain and collaborating in the same brain database. And there's a bunch of great features so we can actually review. If I click on the little icon in the upper right, I can review, I've made a few recent changes. There's Jay over and over again. He's added a lot of that content recently. And there's filters so you can view what content has been added most recently. So you can see who's contributing in your Team Brain environment, who's adding thoughts, what content did they add. Each individual thought has its own thought history as well. So we can click and open up the thought history and review who modified this thought, what they changed, when that change took place, and so forth throughout the existence of that thought in your brain. So we're going to take things now from space a little bit closer to home, and I'm going to jump into our next example brain. This is the aviation brain. And no surprise here, none of us at the Brain Technologies are astronauts. We're interested in space, and we get together for viewing parties of, Blue Origin liftoffs and SpaceX and so forth, and have a lot of fun talking about it and seeing what modern technology is capable of. But we are not true astronauts. So that brain is all about data that exists that we are interested in sort of as a hobby. The difference with this particular brain that we're about to see is that it was created by our very own friend and colleague Chase Ingersoll, who is busy right now answering all of your questions in the GoToMeeting question panel. Feel free to pop in and tell him that you liked his brain, and ask any questions for him about the brain during today's webinar. Chase is a licensed pilot. So Chase is not only interested in flying, he does fly, he can fly. So this brain started off with maybe just all the different maps and data and information that he needed about the types of planes that he flies and the places where he goes, where you can get fuel, where you can land in different airports, what their call signs are. As you might be able to gather, I am not a pilot myself, so I don't know all the ins and outs. But if I wanted to, this brain would be a great resource and a great place to start. So in the Aviation Brain that I have open now, I am going to leave the content window open. Jay chose to show, all the fantastic relationships between thoughts and just the added value and context of an interconnected, visualized knowledge base through the brain. I'm actually going to leave the content area open so you can see all the different types of data that is gathered in this particular brain and resources. And I'm going to start under aviation. We've got a lot of different categories. We can go into aircrafts, which I'll be going into, early aviation, innovation, and so forth. I'm actually going to start by going into flight simulation. There's another thought called learning, and so it's where you can sign up for classes, train, and so forth if you live in Southern California and things of that nature. Let's say I'm just looking at flight simulating. This is a great way to learn how to flight. There's so many advances in flight simulation technology. You can actually fly a 747 or what have you, just from the comfort of your own home by sitting in front of your PC. And so, of course, we can go into different charts that you can download, guides and so forth. I like the software area. So actual flight simulators, either for combat or civilian flight simulators. And I can find out where to download, how it works. And some of these are even connected to the types of planes that you can fly while you're using Flight Simulator for Microsoft 2020 or what have you. So this is a really, really great and helpful way to sort of just get your feet wet with flying a plane, doing so safely from your computer. And once you get the hang of things, maybe you want to jump in and start looking at different types of aircraft that can be flown. Again, Chase broke it down into military aircraft, which is absolutely fascinating, and civilian aircraft, all the way from large airliners, so 707s, 737s, and Chase rather has made really great use of those zoomable icons that Jay was using as well. So if you're not familiar with the type of aircraft you're looking for, you can just hover over a couple of thoughts until you find the specific one. Now I'm looking at a lot of large aircrafts. I know Cessnas tend to be smaller. Here we go. These are the types of planes that I might be starting out in. And notice that it's not just a picture of the plane. Great, there's a Cessna. We've got further information. We've got just some details about the cockpit, the innovations, why it was so popular, sort of the history. Chase has a really great timeline over here. The first flight of a Cessna 162 was in 2006, and the production of this plane ended in 2013. And the entire pilot's handbook for a C-162 is available at your fingertips. So this loads up right here in the content area. The Brain has a really great PDF viewer. So anytime you attach either a web page that is a PDF or the actual document itself into the Brain, you're going to get this nice preview, and you can read page by page the flight manual and controller's guide for a Cessna 162. And what's more than that, we can even take one for a flight. So he's got some great videos on, here I'll fast forward, and you can watch step by step this particular pilot take off, watch their controls, the sequence of events to take off and fly around. I believe this is through Tampa Bay. So that video loads up right there in the content area as well, and plenty of video aviation. I had no idea how much information was out there until Chase shared this Brain with me. But you can see once again, pretty much any type of airplane that is documented or mentioned in this brain, you can actually see someone fly that plane, so you're up close and personal with the control panel and gauges and so forth. Again, just a really, really helpful resource for that process. Now, next, I want to share with you, I'm going to jump into milestones of aviation. So what's really great about this particular brain is beyond just flying modern day planes. Chase really takes us through the history and innovation of aircraft. And I get a really good idea right away of how all of this information can really help you, if you're interested, become a better pilot. What did the Wright brothers do that no one else was doing at the time? There's whole stories here. Just fascinating information about the Wright brothers, their process. So that's actually, most people would consider the start of true modern aviation came with Will and Orville Wright. And so, of course, there's plenty of information about there, as well as other pilots through the years, Chuck Yeager, Charles Lindenberg, and so forth. So you can learn the history of different pilots, what they achieved, and even advancements that they made, discoveries, the pilots themselves, advancements and changes to their aircraft that we still use and recognize to this day as advancing innovation in aviation. And another thing that I'm going to just do a search for is physics. So I'm using the brain search. The great thing about the brain search is whenever you do a search within the brain, you get a nice little preview of the content. So whether it's a note, a file, a PDF, I can actually view that content here just by mousing over that particular thought before I navigate and see, is this the thought that I'm going for? But here in the physics of aviation, we can learn more about just the science behind how aviation works. And again, this sort of hits on my point of how I can see this as being important information to make you a better pilot. I have no idea what the P factor is in aviation. Plain aviation for me is quite literally get in a plane and go to my destination. But the pilot knows all about these different types of things: thrust, parasitic drag. Some things I understand: lift, drag, but other things, density and altitude and so forth, all very, very important factors. So you know the limits of the aircraft that you're in, how things work, and so forth. So, and also I'm going to jump over to the innovation area. And again, just like Jay, I'm using my pins to sort of guide me through, just so I don't navigate through. I could do a search, I could navigate, but my pins just sort of help the storyline of what I'm looking to present today, so I can get right to that thought. Innovations in aircraft. I mentioned earlier, different pilots, different engineers through the years, how they helped to develop what is modern day aircraft. And this starts almost at the very beginning, planes that probably never even existed. They were just drawn up. So you might think that the Wright brothers were the inventors of aviation, but there's drawings in here by Leonardo da Vinci, of course, that tried to think of a way to fly and so forth, and these very interesting different options, all the way from, there we go, from Adler EOL, civil aircraft. Maybe this is a plane that existed if I learn more about this. That's very interesting. But we jump here in alphabetical order from that into the afterburner. So much more modern technology, but we can learn all about what planes use that, how it was so innovative, and how it's advanced and helped us along the way. And also in this list, I really liked the information that was all about the Concorde. And the Concorde is fascinating to me. Here, once again, we've got all the different dates of first flights, productions, and when they were actually retired. Down below, all of the different type of technology that the Concorde used, even a link to the Concorde experience. which is a museum that falls under adventures in aviation. So if aviation is important to you, you can learn much more about the uniqueness of the and I think this is just something that Chase is interested in because it's local in his area, landing at Catalina Island. So there's information there. The Oshkosh Air Show in Wisconsin, a huge collection of just civil aviators that are get together every year. And even the Boneyard, if you're familiar with where they store all of the old planes that are no longer used, but I don't even know. I'd have to read in through this, use them still for parts, or maybe it's just a museum. So different places in aviation that could be of interest for you to just adventure and go and travel to and see over the years. So that's a lot of fun as well. Now, one thing that I did want to share with you in this particular brain, the question came up earlier, the size of these brains. This particular brain is 779 thoughts. And once again, each one of these thoughts, as you've just seen, contains a lot of data, web videos, PDF files, and so forth, a lot of content. It's a feature-rich brain that is all about everything aviation. But within the brain, one of the more advanced features as you start collecting your data and compiling all of your information is the ability to go through and review content. Obviously, options such as, let me close the reports. That's where I'm going to go in just a bit. I'm going to close the notes and go back to the home thought. One of the great features of the brain is going into what we call mind map view. Now, mind map view really depends on your screen real estate. I'm broadcasting at a very low resolution today so that you can see all of the content on the screen. But I'm into mind map view and I can start hitting the plus sign to see 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 generations away from the current active thought. I'll bring this all the way back down to just 2 generations away from aviation. So I'm hitting the little negative sign. There we go. So we get all the way back down to aviation. Then I can click on 1. So 2 generations away. So under aviation, early aircraft, all of their child thoughts. I hit the plus again. I get all of their child thoughts and so on. So that's a really, really great way to get the sort of the big picture of how your information is fitting together. This is a very, very large brain. So there's a lot happening on the screen. I've got another monitor off screen, which is where I use that expanded view for projects that I'm working on, research that I'm doing, and so forth, helping you to sort of get the big picture of how all of your data is connected. Another way to review your content, though, is by running a report. So here I am in the report tab. You can also click on, there it is, view, and just check the option to show a report. This is a feature of the Pro license for Pro license users of the brain. But as you can see, I've got 779 thoughts in this brain, and there are many different ways to structure your reports. If you want to view just recently modified data in the past week, I can say, all right, show me all data modified just within the past 7 days, or the past month, or the past year, all thoughts created in the past 2 or 3 days, and so forth. We can also say, show me all thoughts with attachments. So I'm looking at all thoughts. I can filter by thought type and tag, but show me all thoughts that have internal attachments. There are 52 thoughts with internal attachments, whether these are a lot of pictures, maybe these are Word documents, PDFs. Most of the PDFs that we have in this brain are just linking to the online PDF, but there may be a few internal PDFs. Let's see, so I'm gonna say all PDFs with the name or extension .pdf and refresh that. So I do have 2 thoughts with an internal PDF file attached on this particular thought. One of them is the F-14 Tomcat, and there is the PDF, and it is the flight manual for an F-14 Tomcat. That I'm laughing because I would think that this is something that is maybe confidential or not available to the general public, but obviously Chase found this online and we can go through and read and learn how to fly an F-14 Tomcat page by page. wingspan, all the different details, rollover maneuvers, absolutely amazing. So a lot of great information. And as you can see, different information down below about, hey, there's a link to that thought for the afterburner. So that goes into the F-14 Tomcat. And I can find other related aircraft that also were made by either Northrop Grumman, military, or naval aviation. So other categories that the F-14 Tomcat falls into. So let's go ahead now and jump from, since I think we just recently looked at adventures, so places to go around the planet. Let's bring things right down to earth and share our last brain with you, and that is my electric vehicles brain. This brain started out with my own personal research for finding my next car. I've got an older car. It's going to be getting sold soon, and I certainly plan on replacing it with an electric car. I think it's the way of the future. I think it's important. And so I started researching different electric cars. This started off with 5 or 6 different types of cars. There weren't many out there when I started this brain. I'm keeping charge of price and so forth. Electric cars over the past 2 or 3 years have become incredibly popular. Almost everyone is making them now, car manufacturers. New ones are popping up all the time, and I'm trying to keep track of all of this vast amount of data and information here in this particular brain. So this is another brain, and we all might not be pilots. We're certainly not all astronauts, but most of us drive, and so this might even be relevant to a wider audience for that reason. This brain will be available to you as well. And I even received, after demoing this brain a couple of years ago when it was much smaller, I received information of, hey, Matt, you should put in the link to the new Ford F-150 Lightning, I think it's called. And I did. I received that information. I didn't know it had come out yet. And a lot of that's been in the news for a few reasons. I'll share that with you, but I added that into my brain as well. So the first thing that I want to share is just simply Eevee Manufacturers. So these are all of the different manufacturers that I know of or that I'm keeping track of that are making electric vehicles. I've got a great example, actually. I'm going to minimize my brain and open up, whoops, minimize my brain and open up my web browser because I recently found this particular website of a new electric Lotus. Certainly not in my budget, but hey, it's an electric car. Lotus is obviously really excited about it. They made a real flashy website. So anytime I find a new particular car that I want to keep track of, I can simply open it up right here in my brain and or in my web browser and drag and drop it right into my brain. So there I've got a nice little link to the Lotus Aviation, I believe. So I'll accept all cookies so I can start navigating through this real flashy website you can see with the animated windows and screens and colors and modifications. And there's some more information that I'll add here on that particular thought here in just a bit. So I've got easy access to all of the most popular known car manufacturers that are out there. Anytime I want to learn about one, I can look them up. Polestar is sort of a new company. As you can see, Polestar falls under Eevee Manufacturers. They're actually owned by Volvo. So they're owned by a Chinese manufacturer and Volvo. So you can see the type of cross-linking that I'm keeping track of there. And I've got links down below if I load them up to obviously their car website so I can find out more information about that particular vehicle. Volvo makes the XC40 Recharge, so I've got a link to that car there as well. And so all of my car manufacturers, as well as even startups, so cars that are sort of companies that are starting up that are touting, hey, we're going to make an electric car, but maybe it's not available quite yet, or certainly not available to the masses. Fisker is one of them, or very fancy looking car that should be coming out soon. Some of them, Faraday Future, really fancy supercar, electric car. You can see that loads up and I can actually play around and move that car around the screen right there on their website. That's a lot of fun. Not sure if this car will ever actually happen. You can see I grabbed a note from their webpage that they said they're finally releasing it. I haven't heard about this yet, but maybe it's just because it's not in my price zone. I saw on the website it was rumored to start at $200,000, which is the price of a house. So I just added that note into my notes area with the full article on this particular car loading up right here in the content window. So let's also jump into my other link. If I go back to Eevee Manufacturers, I have a little link to my manufactured suggested retail page. And this is where I'm just simply keeping my own note on what I find online as a price point for different cars. This is just my own research. Please don't think that I've contacted every car and verified their MSRP price. This is just what I'm finding online. As you can see, some of these cars aren't even available yet. I'm doing all of this by creating tables in TheBrain. So TheBrain has a really nice insert table feature in the notes. I insert a table and I keep track of different prices of different car manufacturers. I've sort of divided mine into 3 different categories. And again, please forgive me if you think economy $40,000, but it's just in comparison to what you could be paying for an electric car. So my different categories: economy 0 to 40,000, mid-range up to 70,000, high-end $100,000 and more, and so forth. And when a new car comes along, which I do have one, I can simply manually add that here into the list and then link that to the actual cars page that I have linked on my website. So I'm going to do that now. I am going to jump back into my electric vehicles, and under manufacturers, I recently noticed, I don't know when it happened, but Subaru, I've been waiting. Subaru finally started touting that they are going to make an electric car. I would think they would be leaders in that category, but regardless, they don't have one yet. But they're now introducing, maybe this is just new this year on their website, they're saying 2023, this new Subaru, let's get this on the page, Solterra. So I found this great new page. It even has the MSRP down below for me. We'll just call that 45 to make it easy. And I am going to drag and drop this under the Subaru thought in my brain. And it didn't like the URL, so I'm just going to rename that. So I control click on that particular thought, and oops, not control click, excuse me. I'm going to alt click and rename this Solterra. So that's the new Solterra car. So I've got information about them at my fingertips. I'll jump back to the MSRP. And I said that was 45. So I'm going to squeeze it in here. I'm going to go to this particular table. And if I just put my cursor at the end of the line, right behind the, next to the BMW i3 and before the Toyota Mirai is that car called? I'll just hit enter and it adds a new line for me. So here I can say Subaru, and it's called the Solterra. I think there are 2 R's. Am I spelling that right? Solterra. And we'll put that at 45. And I'm going to add my own little note, not yet, because it's not available. I don't put a year here just because I've been tricked before. There's another car company that I'm sort of following, and originally it was supposed to be in 2000 they're available. Now they're saying 2023. So who knows, if they're saying 2023 now, it could be a few years on down the line. But I'm going to select this word and hyperlink it. And TheBrain actually helps me to find existing content that I might want to link it to. Sure, I could type in a URL there if I want to hyperlink this to www.subaru.com. In this case, TheBrain is saying, hey, you've got a thought called Subaru. Do you want to link it to that? I do. I double click. And now when I click on that Subaru text in my table, it takes me to the Subaru thought here elsewhere in my brain. So and here I'm just going to respell the Solterra thought. So great, I've gathered that information into my brain and also added it into my MSRP table where I keep track of information that that is intriguing to me. Now, the next thing that I want to share with you is not editing in the notes, but utilizing some of these web pages. Sure, it's really nice to click on a thought and go to the web page for that thought. but sometimes the web pages are containing the really, really useful and interactive information. And so what I mean by that is I'm going to jump right back to electric vehicles and go down into my key technologies. So all about autonomous driving, batteries, EV charging, that's where I want to go. So under EV charging, I've got information about home charging. Different manufacturers release, different types of chargers that you can actually install yourself, or have a professional electrician installed for you. You can just buy a Tesla charger, for example, and actually a wall connector and have an electrician install that in your garage. So you don't need to drive to a location to charge your car. However, if you do need to drive to a location, then also under EV charging, I'm keeping track of different websites that there's so many out there that will map out where you can charge your car, how much it costs, how far distances are between charging stations. So you can plan long distance driving ahead of time, which people used to think, oh, driving an electric car, you'll get 10, 20 miles away from home and run out of power. Not anymore. Those days are gone. Now you can drive cross country in an electric car. Let's say, for example, I'm going to Chicago. So I'm right here in the website. Oh, there's too many. I'm going to narrow this down. Let's go to O'Hare. There's O'Hare International Airport. So it zooms in. Little red circles. I've been to this web page before, so I know little red circles means it's busy. There's like probably a line waiting for cars waiting to charge. Green means it's available. Yellow means it's coming, it's being built, it's not there yet. But I can click on any one of those and find out this is the OIC parking. So this is a parking garage. They've got 2 chargers. And if I want to see the complete details, I can get a map so I can get directly to that location. I can scroll down, I can see the types of ports that they have. There's so many different types. These times are just sort of a very general type of port that fit to most cars or have connectors. I've got links to where you can buy connectors in this brain as well. So one of them is currently busy and one is available. This website is really great because I know there's an open stall to charge my car. I don't want to take all the time, an hour or a half hour, whatever, to drive to this location and the port isn't available. There's currently one available port. Only 2 ports, that isn't so great. So maybe I want to find something with a few more ports. That one only has 2. I'm trying to find one with a lot. 2. Wow, these are some pretty small ports. 2. Everything that I go to has just 2, but they're all pretty much available. So I can go to any one of these and find out the cost. If it's free, if you park your car there or buy some. This is in a Walgreens, so I can just pull in, charge my car while I do a little bit of shopping. So helpful information right there from the web page that loads up in the content area of the brain. And now I want to take you to another option, battery types. I'll just do a search for this. Actually, let's see if I have this thought. Batteries. There I do. Battery types. So this is an area of the brain I want to share with you. You saw earlier I did a drag and drop into the brain. Now I want to get into different ways that you can actually start creating data and content in your brain. Drag and dropping web pages, adding file attachments. You can drag and drop those or create those from scratch by clicking on attach and uploading a file into your brain. But you can also import data into your brain as well. If you are working on a research project and you've got an outline, you've got a properly formatted Excel spreadsheet, I'm not going to be able to show you all of the different import capabilities that the brain has. We've got several, but I'm going to start with outlines because outlines are a very, very great way to start out a project that you're working on. If you document an outline, here are the different 5 steps, the sub-steps, and so forth. Map that out into your brain and then start adding content on along the way. That's a great way to get started with a research project. So different types of batteries in cars. I have a nice little outline, a document here on different types of electrical motors. And from ones that aren't being used anymore, squirrel cages, wound fields, and so forth, all the way up to more modern. I'll continue and add more modern AC systems and so forth. But regardless, I've got an example here, squirrel cages. I don't know much about squirrel cages, but I recently found out there are 3 different phases to a squirrel cage AC induction motor. So I'm gonna add some more content, and notice I'm adding tabs. So I tabbed over first to the underneath squirrel cage, and then one more tab, and I add phase 1, tab, 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 phase 2, and phase 3. I just wanted to add that information sort of live so you can see that you can modify your outline really quickly. Let's copy this tab delineated content onto our clipboard. So I right click and copy. And here in the brain, I simply right click in the background, and notice I have this option, paste text outline as thoughts. Anytime you have a tab delineated outline, or like I said, a properly formatted Excel spreadsheet copied onto your clipboard, you'll get this option when you paste in their brain or right click in your brain, paste text outline. Now all of that information, AC inductor motors, wound fields and squirrel cages, underneath squirrel cages are the different phases that I just added. And so all of that structure is there for me to now start appending all of my data onto. So that's a really, really great way to sort of get started with a research project in the brain. And now I can collectively add all of my data into specific fields that I've already mapped out in an earlier step of my brain creation process. Again, that's just one option that you have for creating data in your brain. You can start creating, the brain thought by thought. And I think we did that with the space brain, for example. Started off with the thought Earth, click and drag, create a thought called sun, click and drag, create a thought called moon, find some content, attach it. So 500, 600, 700, even 1,000 thought brains can be created one thought at a time. I'm going to share one more feature with you, and then we're going to jump into the QA portion of the class. It's just another way of getting data into your research brain. Quite often when you're gathering data, gathering research, it can happen at any time during the day, whether you're having your cup of coffee and you're sitting down on your laptop, maybe you're on your iPhone and you're just browsing through the web, and a new article comes out that you're particularly interested in. I'm even going to close my electric cars brain. So I don't even have my electric cars brain open right now. And I am browsing the web, and I happen across a story. Here's one all about Jeff Bezos using Rivian trucks and signing a contract to use Rivian trucks just to simply drive astronauts to and from Blue Origin launches. It's a really interesting article, and it talks about how it has helped promote awareness of Rivian and popularity and so forth. So this is a great article. I certainly want to add this into my brain. What do? Now, I could open the brain, launch the application, navigate to the correct brain database, navigate to the correct area of the brain, get the 2 windows open at the same time, click and drag into the brain. That's a lot of extra steps. So here, as I'm just reading, I can simply click on the brain icon here in my sort of add-ons that I've added to my browser. So I use Google Chrome, and there is an extension, a BrainBox extension for Google Chrome. You can go to our website and find extensions or bookmarklets or instructions on how to add this add-on to your favorite browser. I use Chrome, so I've got the extension. I can just simply click that button, and notice it said added to BrainBox. I've captured that information, I've sent it to my BrainBox, and I can organize it at a later date when I've got a little bit more time. I'm going to grab one more, another article all about Rivian, sort of the same, under the same topic, and there they are jumping into their Rivian to go off and launch into space. I think it's a really great concept of tying in this, cars with space. So I'm going to add that into my BrainBox as well. Great, now I've got some extra time. I am working on let's go back and launch the brain. I'm back in the brain, and I happen to open up my brain for electric cars. And I decide to review what is available in my BrainBox. So I click on the button in the upper right-hand corner. There you can see those 2 articles that I just added. I should have opened this up before to show you that they weren't there yet. So they showed up in my account, in my brain box, and now I've got some extra time. I can add these in. So Rivian, I've got a thought for Rivian. There it is, Rivian, and I just want to click, and there's a plus sign to create a new thought underneath the current active thought. The paperclip would add it to the existing thought that's in the center of the Plex. I can preview, and there's some other features. I can delete this out of my brain box and so forth. So for this example, I'm just going to click on the plus, takes it out of my brain box and adds it into the desired area of my brain. This one goes there as well, so I'll add a plus to that one. And this is another, I think Canoe is sort of copying what Bezos did with Rivian and Blue Origin, but now NASA signed a contract for Canoe, their Canoe cars. Let's go over to Canoe. There we go. So I go to my Canoe. That's one of the Eevee startups. They're not out yet. You can't buy a Canoe car quite yet. Whoops, I want to click on my icon. NASA selects Canoe for EVs to take them to the Artemis moon missions. And I'll simply add that article into my brain. I actually have another article when that news first came out, all about these being the car of choice to take them to their NASA Artemis moon launches. And of course, what did I do? I linked one thought from one brain to another brain. Yet again, another feature. We've shown you 3 separate brains. This is a way where we can connect thoughts between brains. Each individual brain has its own sort of URL. Each thought has its own URL. If you're syncing your brain to the cloud, you can right click and get the URL for the online version, the web URL, or the local thought URL, and link locally your different brains to one another. So in this case, I grabbed a link from the Artemis thought over in Jay's Humans in Space brain and linked it here underneath a relevant category of NASA using Canoe cars in my car brain. And I can just launch, and it's going to open up that brain and take me directly to that specific thought. So there we've sort of gone full circle, so to speak, of from space into the upper atmosphere, into cars, and then back into space again. And I really, really hope that this wide variety of different topics, different data sources that we're gathering, different features that we're utilizing within the brain application gives you sort of the upper edge of using the brain to visualize your innovative topics and navigate through all of your research that you're doing, either recreationally or even just career-wise for your jobs, for if you are an astronaut or a pilot or an EV technician or just interested in the topic altogether. Again, all of these brains will be available for you. And at this point, Chase, I'm going to send it over to you. Thank you, Chase, for letting us use your aeronautical brain today. And have any questions come up for either Jay or myself in the QA panel?
Absolutely. We have quite an awesome selection of questions today. Thanks for everyone for participating. First one up here, how can you link a thought to multiple other thoughts that aren't visible in the Plex?
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, you probably saw a lot of that, particularly in Jay's. This is a great example here. I just clicked on Apollo 16. We not only have all of the launch years and so forth, the astronauts that went up in Apollo 16, but multiple parent thoughts. Let's say they Apollo 16. Also, we wanted this link. Let's say they stopped by Mars. Jay, I promise you I'm going to delete this content as soon as I create it, because
No
they did not
worries.
stop by Mars. But let's say they went to Mars while they were out traveling around through space. Okay, well, I would certainly want to gather that information into my brain. So I'm going to create a link from Apollo 16 to Mars. And notice as I'm typing, the brain presents me with a list of all matching thoughts elsewhere in this particular brain. I've typed in MAR. So there I've got Mario, Mark, Marty, and there's a bunch of Mars thoughts, March, and so forth. Any thought that contains a word that now starts with MAR is showing up for me in this list. And it's the brain's way of helping you to reduce clutter and duplication of thoughts. So you can easily link one thought to multiple other related thoughts. As I'm starting to type in Mars, if I just type in Mars and double click, I can link to that existing Mars thought. Now everyone thinks that Apollo 16 stopped by Mars if they download this brain. So I can either right click on a link to unlink that, or if this brain hasn't synced yet, I can click on edit and undo that create link. So I can quickly undo that, the link between those two thoughts there. So the brain will
Another thing
help
I
you with
wanted
that.
to add,
Yeah,
just real quickly to that, Matt, since the Mars thought is actually also pinned at the top there, you could also just drag that link right over to the pin and
that's
create it.
true.
So,
Yes.
so
Yeah,
it is
if you
visible in this case, but that is just another way to create links to
That's an
thoughts that
excellent point. Yeah, if you see the
context.
two thoughts, that's a great way. If you don't know if that thought is there, the brain will remind you if it is. But if you see the thought, as Jay's mentioning, I can just click and drag right up there to Mars. Or now I also see it in the past thought list. So I can click and drag and connect two thoughts that way as well. And now I right click once again and unlink those two thoughts.
Awesome, appreciate it. And this next one was for Jay.
Mhm.
User here was curious, how did you discover and add content to the Space Brain?
Yeah, a lot of what I did for the Space Brain was just kind of like I said, I myself I'm just super interested in space and all the missions we're sending out. So anytime I saw anything on like social media or something like that, I would just maybe make a quick note in my notes on my phone, or if it's a website, I add it to my Brain box. So the Brain is also available on mobile. And some of the Brain box features that Matt showed you, you can use on mobile as well. So I did a lot of that. And then also, I mean, in preparation for today's meeting, I also just kind of try to get back up to date with the newer missions that we've gone on since our last presentation. So a lot of it is just, going online, seeing a cool mission, reading up about it, grabbing the most interesting parts. And that was another thing. I wasn't just dragging and linking websites. I was actually reading through the website so I could better formulate how to link the thoughts. So that's why the Plex is kind of essentially detailing what you would read on the websites. So yeah, that's the approach that I took for that one.
Great. And one more here. How do you create a link to a thought that exists in a different brain?
Oh yes, so that's what I showed you at the very end of the car brain. Let's say, well, that Artemis mission that I mentioned earlier is they're planning on taking humans back to the moon. So if I wanted to link the moon to the link that I have about Artemis in my car brain, I'm going to right click and I'm going to copy the local thought URL. Now, if you're syncing to the brain cloud, you'll also have this option to copy the web thought URL. And that's really great because, this is a shared brain. Jay has shared this brain with not only us in the Brain Technologies to be editors, but he's also placed it online and people can visit this brain online. So if I wanted to tweet out a link to get to the moon thought in Jay's brain, I would just copy the web thought URL, go out to Twitter, paste it right in, and anybody in the world can actually click and go to that thought online. To connect between two brains for brains that you utilize, I'm going to copy the local thought URL. So I have that information on my clipboard. I can now navigate to another brain. So canoes are driving astronauts to the Artemis spacecraft. The Artemis spacecraft is then flying to the moon. So I right click and it shows up as paste web link. It's not necessarily on the web, but it is a link and it's linking to the moon thought in another brain. So, and those features can be used, those copy local thought URL, that URL can be used in other applications as well. I see people that put those into emails, or we even use them in the brain. We, I've got an instant messaging system so we can all communicate with one another. And if I need to send Jay or Chase into a brain that I'm working on that they have access to, I just not tweet out, but I instant message them the local thought URL and they go right to the specific thought in that brain, and can continue on adding information or what have you.
Fantastic. And do you have time for one more here?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. How can you control who has access to a shared brain?
Great, yes. To do that, you would click on, and here I'll use my brain. To do that, number one, the very first step is to sync your brain to the Brain cloud. You can visit our website, www.thebrain.com, and learn all about the different license types that we have. Free, if you're just using the free license of the Brain, you cannot add on, other editors. You'd need to upgrade to Team Brain. But pro users is for a single desktop only, so you can't sync to the cloud with just a pro single standalone desktop only license. Pro combo, now we're syncing up to the cloud and accessing this brain from multiple devices. You can actually let other users have access to your brain in read-only mode, or give them a link to the online version if you synced it, all the way up to Team Brain. I realize I'm throwing out a lot of information. That information is all available on our website. So you can visit thebrain.com, go to the store page, and see the different license types and the features available. I am running Team Brain, which means I can collaborate with other Team Brain members in my group. So step number one, I sync this brain to the cloud. If I only keep it local here on my desktop, I won't be able to share it with anyone. So step one is to sync onto the Brain cloud. And just to let you know, we've got very secure, we're very proud of our security and sync capabilities. So it's a very secure sync. Only you have access to your brain with your login and password information. None of us at the Brain Technologies can see and open and navigate through your brain databases that you've synced. You would need to actually share that with us. So then to share a brain, we've synced it. I click on online and open up my brain access and sharing. And this is where all the magic happens. Number one, I've allowed public access, which means if you have this URL, and please feel free to jot this down and paste that into a browser, what will happen? You'll view this brain online. You'll go directly to my electric vehicles brain online and have read-only access. Even if you don't have a Brain account or have the Brain installed, you'll be able to navigate through my brain on the cloud with this public URL. Down below are all of the editors that I have to my brain. So I'm the administrator of the brain, which means I can add and remove other users. There you can see Chase, there's Jay, they're both writers. They can edit in my brain, and I welcome them if they find out about some new technology with electric vehicles that I don't know about yet. They are absolutely free to write that information in. Other users have given them access, but not editor access. You can right click on any user to upgrade their access level. Again, these are Team Brain users, so I can remove this user if I want. If Shelly is not contributing and saying, hey, I don't want to accidentally delete anything out of your brain, why don't you just make me a reader? Sure, I'll just make her a reader. I'll save that. And as soon as I sync the brain, it sends out all of those updates. If a new user has been added, they will receive an email that says, congratulations, you have access to this particular brain now. But you can modify who has access and what level of access they have to the brain. And if I know there's another user out there that uses the brain, but they're not necessarily in my team brain, I can go back to online, brain access and sharing, and I'll type in their email address. So I'll invite this particular user. I just type in their email because I know that is a brain user, and they'll have read-only access to that brain. They're not a Team Brain user, so I would not be able to right-click and make them a writer or an administrator. They would have to have a Team Brain license to do that. So those are some of the different ways that you can share your brain database. And I think that wraps up all of our questions. So thank you so much, Chase, for handling the QA today and sharing your aviation brain with us. Thank you, Jay. Any final words for anyone interested in navigating through space in their brain?
No, just thanks for having me on, and yeah, I recommend people check out the Space Brain and the Aviation Brain, the Eevee brains. These are all good brain examples that we've put together, put a lot of work to making them, accurate and useful. So I think there's some useful information here for some people who are interested. So yeah, go ahead and I'm actually personally excited about what we're doing in tourism and space. So go ahead and check out these brains. I definitely recommend it.
Great. And thank you everyone so much for joining us today. If you do have another question, I know Chase really had his hands full with all of the questions that were coming in today. So feel free to write into us, support@thebrain.com. We're happy to answer any additional questions you may have. Today's webinar was recorded, so everyone that joined the webinar will get a link to rewatch at your own speed, or if you want to go back and sort of watch how we did a particular step or component that we demoed today, feel free to do that. And also included in that link will be a landing page where, like we said, you can download these 3 different brains or just simply view them online to navigate through if any particular brain is of interest to you. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Enjoy the rest of the week. And as always, enjoy your brain. Thanks everyone.